Have you ever felt that the night itself was watching you? Not just the trees swaying in the wind, not just the silence of a countryside road, but something far more ancient, far more alive. It happened to a boy named Daniel one cold October evening. He wasn't the type who believed in ghost stories. A ranch kid from New Mexico, raised around cattle, dust, and silence. But on that night, he swore the silence wasn't empty. It had weight. Daniel had gone out to check the fences, a normal chore, his flashlight beam cut across the dry earth, catching the glint of barbed wire. But then he heard it. A whistle. Not from a human throat, too sharp, too hollow. It echoed through the trees like something mocking the sound of a man. Daniel froze. You see, in Navajo lore, skinwalkers often mimic voices, whistles, or even laughter. They don't just hunt you, they play with you. He told himself it was just an animal, probably a coyote. But then he saw it. Two eyes, yellow, burning like coals, standing too high off the ground for any wolf. Its body was wrong, its shape stretched, limbs crooked, as if it was learning how to walk in human form, but failing. And then, in a voice that wasn't his father's but sounded almost like him, it called out, "Daniel." His blood ran cold. That's when he remembered what his grandmother used to whisper. If you hear your name in the dark, and you know no one is there, never answer. Can you imagine? Being out there alone, just you, the cold air, and something that knows your name, something that shouldn't exist. Yet it's standing there, waiting for you to respond. Daniel did the only thing he could. He turned and he ran. But as he did, he swore the footsteps behind him weren't four-legged. They sounded human. Daniel slammed the old wooden door behind him, chest heaving, sweat dripping despite the cold desert night. His father looked up from the table, a cigarette dangling from his lips. "You all right, boy?" Daniel wanted to tell him everything, about the eyes, about the voice. But something inside him hesitated. What if his father laughed it off? What if speaking it aloud gave that thing more power? So instead he only said, "Coyotes! They're close." His father grunted, "Coyotes don't whistle." That was all. No more words. But Daniel saw the way his father's hand trembled slightly as he set the cigarette down. He knew. Maybe he had seen it too, once. Later that night, Daniel lay awake in his room. The ranch was quiet, the kind of silence you could almost choke on. But silence has a strange way of amplifying the smallest sounds. A soft scrape, a slow thud. It was outside his window. He turned his head ever so slightly, just enough to see the pale curtain move. Not from the wind, but from something brushing against the glass. Long, bony fingers traced across it. Then a knock, 3 slow taps. Daniel's breath stopped. He wanted to scream for his parents, but his voice was locked in his throat. And then he heard it. His mother's voice, soft, calm, just outside. "Danny, honey, open the window. It's cold out here." His heart clenched. His mother was in the next room. He had heard her voice earlier, humming to herself as she cleaned the kitchen. That wasn't her. "Let me ask you something. What would you do if you heard your mother's voice outside your window, knowing she was safely inside? Would you look? Would you dare to answer? Or would you pretend you never heard it at all?" Daniel did nothing. He pulled the blanket over his head like a child hiding from the dark. Hours passed before the sound stopped. But in the morning, when he finally dared to look, he saw footprints under the window. Not animal, not human, something in between. The morning sun did little to chase away the dread of the night before. Daniel sat at the table, barely touching his breakfast. His father stared at the boy, then at the window where Daniel had pointed to the strange footprints. They were still there. The dust of the ranch had preserved them perfectly. Long, uneven impressions. Not paw prints. Not boots. Almost both. His father's jaw tightened. He said nothing, but Daniel caught the flicker of fear in his eyes. And if there's one thing scarier than seeing a monster, it's seeing your father afraid of it too. By evening, the house felt different. The walls, once a shield against the desert, now felt thin, fragile. His mother locked every door twice, something she had never done before. She even hung bundles of sage by the windows. Daniel remembered her doing that only once, years ago, when his grandmother still lived with them. Dinner was silent. No one mentioned the prince. No one dared. But silence carries weight, and it broke when a sound drifted in from outside. It was a voice, a low, broken cry, like someone calling for help. "Please! Please! Somebody help me!" Daniel's mother's fork clattered onto her plate. His father's face drained of color. He whispered, almost to himself, "Don't answer it! No matter what you hear, don't open that door." The crying grew louder, closer. Then it shifted. A man's voice, then a woman's, then, horribly, a child's. A voice so pitiful it made Daniel's chest ache. "Daddy, it hurts. Please let me in." Daniel's father stood, fists clenched, though his hands shook. He didn't move toward the door. He just stood there, staring, as if bracing himself. And then, silence. Dead, suffocating silence. Imagine sitting there with your family, hearing voices begging outside your door. Voices that sound like people you know, people you love, and knowing, deep inside, that if you respond, you might never be seen again. That night, no one slept. The house groaned, the desert wind howled, and somewhere beyond the fence line, something walked in circles, waiting. The ranch house was old, built by Daniel's grandfather, its wooden beams creaking even in still air. That night, every creak felt like a warning. Every shadow stretched too long, as though the darkness itself was alive. Daniel lay awake in his room, heart pounding. His parents had left the hallway light on, something they never did. A dim glow spilled under his door, but even that light didn't feel safe. Then it came. A soft, scratching sound. Not outside, not at the window this time, from inside the walls. Slow, dragging, like nails pulling across wood. Daniel held his breath, praying it would stop. It didn't. The scratching moved, closer, higher, until it was right above him, crawling across the ceiling. Dust drifted down from the wooden planks overhead. And then, a whisper. "Daniel." The voice wasn't outside anymore. It was in the room with him. He clutched the blanket, trembling, when the doorknob rattled. Once, twice, his mother's voice, soft and pleading, drifted through. "Sweetheart, open up. It's me." Daniel's chest tightened. He knew his mother was down the hall. He had seen her close her own door for the night. He didn't move, didn't answer. Then the voice changed. It cracked, deepened, turning into something not human at all. A guttural growl that dragged his name into something monstrous. "Daniel." The lights flickered. The hallway bulb buzzed, then burst, plunging everything into shadow. Daniel screamed, and the sound brought his father rushing in with a rifle. But when the door burst open, there was nothing there. Just Daniel, pale, shaking, pointing at the ceiling. The wood above them was scorched, blackened in claw-like patterns. His father didn't speak. He just pulled Daniel close and whispered something in Navajo his grandmother used to say, "It has entered the house." Now, think about that for a moment. It's one thing when something stalks you outside, in the wilderness, under the open sky. But when it crosses into your home, the one place you thought you were safe, where do you run then? Where can you hide? That night, none of them slept. The air inside the house was heavy, filled with the smell of sulfur and smoke. And somewhere in the corner of every shadow, Daniel swore he saw it, standing too still, too tall, watching. By the third night, the family was breaking. Sleep was impossible, food untouched, nerves stretched to the edge. Every hour brought new sounds: claws on the porch, laughter outside the window, whispers in the walls. Daniel's father finally made a decision. Before dawn, he saddled the truck and drove Daniel and his mother across the desert to a small, run-down house at the edge of the reservation. An old woman lived there. They called her Aunt Mariah, though she was not truly their aunt. She was a medicine woman, one of the last who still remembered the old songs and the forbidden stories. When they entered her dimly lit home, the smell of sage and cedar clung to the air. Mariah didn't ask why they had come. She looked at Daniel, his pale face, his trembling hands, and she already knew. "It has found you," she said, her voice like gravel. "And once it knows your name, once it has entered your home, it does not leave easily." Daniel's mother asked, almost in a whisper, "What does it want from us?" Mariah's eyes grew heavy. She placed a small pouch of herbs into Daniel's hand. "It does not want. It takes, it feeds, on your fear, your voice, your soul." Daniel's father demanded, "How do we stop it?" The old woman shook her head slowly. "You cannot kill a skinwalker, not like a coyote, not like a man. To fight it, you must know who it once was. For every skinwalker was a person once, a witch who traded their humanity for power." The words sank deep into Daniel's chest. Human. It had once been human. That made it worse. Mariah leaned closer, her eyes sharp, her voice low. "Do not speak to it. Do not follow it. Do not believe what you hear. It will try to take your shape. It will try to become your blood. And if you see it with your own eyes, truly see it. Pray, boy. Pray that your soul is strong enough to endure." Can you imagine being told that the thing haunting your family was, once, a person? That maybe it was someone who lived not far from you, someone who chose darkness, who still walks among men by day, and hunts by night? Mariah burned sage, chanting words Daniel could not understand. But as the smoke filled the room, the house itself groaned. Outside, coyotes howled in unison, and Mariah's face grew grim. "It already knows you are here." That night, the desert held its breath. No wind, no rustle of leaves, not even the cry of coyotes. Silence so deep, it felt like the world had ended. Daniel's family had returned to the ranch, armed with Mariah's herbs and prayers. Sage bundles smoldered in every corner of the house, their smoke curling into the dark like fragile shields. But even those protections felt thin. Around midnight, it began. The cattle outside screamed first, a guttural, panicked bellowing that ripped through the night. Hooves thundered against the earth, as if the entire herd was breaking apart. Daniel's father grabbed his rifle, ready to storm out, but Mariah's warning echoed in his mind. "Do not follow it. Do not answer." The sound shifted. The cattle fell silent. And then came the laughter. Not human, not animal, something in between. A broken chorus, as though many mouths were trying to mimic the same sound. It circled the house, closer and closer. Daniel clutched the pouch Mariah had given him. His mother whispered prayers under her breath, hands trembling. Then, with a sudden crash, the front door shook on its hinges. 1, 2, 3 times, as though something massive was trying to tear it open. His father raised the rifle, but the wood above them groaned. From the ceiling, dust rained down. Something was crawling in the attic. The scratching, the dragging, the whispers. And then a voice. "Let me in, Daniel. Please. I'm hurt." It was his own voice, perfectly mimicked. Daniel's knees buckled. He wanted to scream, but no sound came. The voice moved, circling the house, speaking with his mother's tone, then his father's, shifting seamlessly like it wore their souls as masks. Then the windows rattled. Long, skeletal hands slammed against the glass, leaving streaks of black ash where they touched. One by one, the bulbs in the house flickered and burst, plunging the family into darkness. In the pitch black, Daniel saw it. A tall, twisted figure standing in the hallway, hunched, its limbs too long, its face a blur, shifting like melted wax. And when it smiled, the teeth weren't human. His father fired. The blast lit the room in a flash, but the thing was gone. The bullet tore only wood. Then came the real horror. The sound of breathing, inside the room, behind them. Now tell me, what's worse? Hearing something stalk you from the dark, or knowing it's already in the room with you, breathing just inches from your neck? Daniel didn't move. None of them did. The family huddled together in the dark, praying the night would end. But deep down, Daniel knew this was only the beginning. The silence after the gunshot was suffocating. The smoke of gunpowder still clung in the air. But no body, no blood, nothing. Only that slow, steady sound of breathing, as though the walls themselves had lungs. Then came the smell. Sulfur, burnt hair, rotting flesh. It slithered into every corner of the house, wrapping around them like a curse. Daniel's father, gripping the rifle, whispered through clenched teeth, "Stay behind me." But Daniel knew his father was as terrified as he was. A sound rattled the kitchen window. Glass cracked, then shattered inward. Something crawled through. It wasn't walking. It dragged itself across the floor like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. Its limbs bent wrong, its hands twisting like claws. And its face? God, its face wasn't one face at all. It shifted. First Daniel's father, then his mother, then Daniel himself, each time more distorted, more broken, like clay stretched too thin. "Danny," it croaked in his own voice. "Come with me." His mother sobbed. His father raised the rifle again, but before he could fire, the creature lunged. Faster than anything human should move. The rifle flew from his hands as though ripped by invisible force. It towered over them now, eyes glowing like burning embers. Its mouth opened wide, too wide, unhinged, filled with teeth that didn't belong to any living creature. Daniel clutched the pouch Mariah had given him. His fingers shook, but something inside him whispered, "This is what it's for." He ripped it open, scattering the herbs into the air. The smoke erupted, filling the room with a bitter, stinging scent. The skinwalker shrieked, its scream rattling the walls, shaking the windows until they cracked. For a split second, Daniel saw its true form. Not human, not animal, a hollow, rotting shell wearing scraps of skin, with eyes that held centuries of rage and hunger. It clawed at its own face, howling, as the sage smoke wrapped around it like fire. But instead of dying, it laughed, a deep, guttural laugh that made Daniel's bones ache. "Your prayers are nothing." It lunged again, knocking Daniel backward, its weight crushing him to the floor. Its face leaned inches from his, breath hot and foul. And in that moment, Daniel realized this wasn't just about survival anymore. It wanted him. Imagine being pinned down by something older than your bloodline, something wearing your face, your father's voice, your mother's cry, and knowing it doesn't want to kill you, it wants to become you. Daniel screamed as the skinwalker's claws pressed against his chest. And, for the first time in his life, he wondered if his soul could actually be torn from his body. Daniel's scream ripped through the house as the skinwalker's claws pressed into his chest. He felt the cold burn of something that wasn't flesh, wasn't bone, something older, darker, pressing against his very soul. And then a sound shattered the moment. His father, blood running from his temple, shouted words Daniel had never heard before. Ancient words, the same ones his grandmother used to whisper at night. A chant, broken but powerful. His voice cracked with desperation, but it carried weight. The skinwalker froze, its ember eyes narrowing. It hissed, the sound sharp enough to make the lights flicker back to life. The herbs Daniel had scattered glowed faintly in the smoke, as though the chant had awakened them. The creature staggered back, shrieking, its body twisting unnaturally. For the first time, it looked wounded, not defeated, but pushed back. And then, silence. It was gone, just like that. No trace, only the blackened claw marks across the floorboards and the stench of sulfur lingering in the air. Daniel lay gasping, clutching his chest, half believing he had died. His mother pulled him close, sobbing into his hair. His father lowered the rifle, his hands trembling. But none of them spoke, none dared. Because in the corner of the room, carved deep into the wood, were words none of them had written. I will return. And here's the part that chills me the most. Some people believe skinwalkers don't just vanish. They don't forget. Once they know your name, once they've touched your life, they mark you. You can leave the desert, you can burn the house, you can bury every memory. But they'll wait. Days, years, even generations. The Morrison Ranch still stands today. Locals whisper about it, though most won't go near. Some nights, travelers swear they hear knocking on the windows or laughter in the wind. And if you stand close enough, if you listen carefully, you might just hear a voice. Your own voice. Calling you from the dark. Like, share, and subscribe for more real horror stories.